The Montreal Canadiens are still alive in this year's Stanley Cup final. They're only down 3-1 against the Tampa Bay Lightning. It sounds a little familiar. Do the Canadiens have the Lightning where they want them, or are they only delaying the inevitable? Let's talk about it on this week's Hockey Inside Out. Julian McKenzie here, back at it with the usual suspects. Cowan of the Montreal Gazette, Jessica Rusnak of CBC Daybreak Montreal, and Rick Green. We can list out all the accomplishments. Number 1 overall draft pick, Stanley Cup champion, former assistant coach with the Montreal Canadiens. Maybe next week I'll try to find another fun one to throw in here as we continue with another Stanley Cup final edition of our show. Before we get to the first question, a small anecdote for everybody here. Maybe you all here on the panel knew about it, but maybe some in our comment section probably didn't know. 2012, Dominic Ducharme coaching the Halifax Mooseheads of the QMJHL, down 3-0 in a series against Patrick Roy and the Quebec Remparts. They come back all the way from 3-0 to force a Game 7 and win in overtime. Any guesses as to who scored that game-winning goal in that Game 7?
Jonathan Drouin.
Yes, Jonathan Drouin is the guy who scored the Game 7 series-clinching goal to have Dominic Ducharme and his team come back from a 3-0 series deficit. All that to say, Dominic Ducharme is at least one person on this Canadiens team who has done this before. And after winning Game 4 Monday night, they're at least 1/4 of the way through in creating that comeback. Panelists, do the Canadiens have any chance of winning the next 3 games to force a Game 7 and even win the Stanley Cup?
If this Canadiens team has shown us anything this year, anything's possible. Who thought they were going to win Game 5 against Toronto after they got shut out in Game 4? They came back and went that 7-game win streak. That game against Tampa, that overtime win, that was a 4-minute penalty to kill off at the end of the third period into overtime. You figure, in the intermission before the overtime period, you figure, this is over. Tampa's going to score on the power play. There's no way they're going to kill off the last 3 minutes of that power play, but they did. So anything really is possible with this team. It's highly unlikely. Only once in NHL history has a team ever come back from being down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup final. But if Carey Price plays like he did, Game 4, it's definitely possible. Goal is so key. I mean, in all 4 games of the series, the team has scored first one. The Canadiens Game 4, that's the first time they've led at this series in any point. That's when they got that first goal. So I think anything's possible, and they have that overtime magic going. They're 6-1 in overtime. It's not like '93 when they went 10-0. But I said it's unlikely, but I wouldn't count them out. I mean, Game 5, next game, obviously, if they win in Tampa, the pressure switches from Montreal to Tampa with them coming back to Montreal. But it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, and never say never. Listen, who would have thought that they would have gotten this far, and the way that they've done it? They've always been facing adversity, and they're going to have their hands full, but they're going to go game by game, the old classic cliche. But listen, the overtime win, momentum, bounces, there's a lot of things that are happening favorably for the Canadiens. I don't count them out, but, they're going to have to continue to have Carey Price, doing what he does, which is key saves at the good time, and, having a number of the players elevate their play to perform the way they've been performing as of late. So great stuff happening. They just have to piece their way along period by period, and anything is possible.
I've picked the Habs to win every single series since the playoffs began, so of course they're going to win. I'm just kidding, but in all seriousness,
you're not.
Well, you never know what might happen, but they need a lot of things to go right. Carey Price in Game 4 played like the Carey Price that they needed him to be. The penalty kill came out big. They need that to happen as well. And, Tampa was right in there with them. The moment the Canadiens would be able to take a lead, they came right back. They weren't able to really feel comfortable at all in Game 4, and you know that they're going to turn up the heat. Yes, Tampa won the Stanley Cup last year, but it was in a bubble. It was a completely different situation. I'm sure that they would love to have it in a more normal setting, win the Stanley Cup, especially now with the Game 5 going to Tampa, have their fans be able to have their family and friends around, something that they weren't able to have last year. So that's going to be a driving factor. And they also don't want to be the ones that didn't come out on top and let the underdogs take advantage of them. But for the Canadiens right now, we've seen them take the momentum and run with it. And now it's up to them to try and figure out a way to keep it going for 3 more wins.
And kudos to Donald Charm. The line changes that he made. When he put Josh Anderson with Caulfield and Suzuki replacing Toffoli, he said after the morning skate that he needed somebody on that line to go to the net hard. And that's how they scored the goal in overtime. Josh Anderson driving to the net with Cole Caulfield. And what an effort by Anderson, falling behind the net, getting back up, coming back in front, picking it up. So Donald Charm, he mixed things around and it worked. I still wonder about making Jesperi Kotkaniemi a healthy scratch, but they won the game. And kudos to the coach. That was a good move to sort of shuffle the lines around a little bit. And Josh Anderson with 2 goals. I mean, he looked really good with Suzuki and Caulfield. Nick Suzuki, what a game he played. He was all over the ice. I mean, this kid, what a heart he has and what a determination he has. And, just bright things moving forward for Nick Suzuki.
And if you look down the lineup, every one of those guys on the team played with such desperation. They don't want to lose right now, and they're showing a great example of what desperate hockey will do for them. And if they continue on that note, which I expect they will, there's a little bit of maybe doubt in Tampa's mind that they're going to have their hands full, and that's a good thing to happen. So let's see if they can't get the next one. And listen, we'll see how that goes after that game.
Very quietly in the midst of that game, Cole Caulfield getting himself 2 points, both on assists, including on the overtime winner that led to Josh Anderson's overtime winning goal. Let's talk about some other stuff that impressed us from that Game 4. I mean, Josh Anderson was one name we could discuss. Nick Suzuki, who I agree with you, Stu. I think he was very excellent for this Canadiens team on offense and on defense as well. He's had some games where he's looked as if he's been the best Canadiens forward playing in these playoff games. What are some other things that impressed us from this Canadiens team in Game 4?
Well, it seems we're always talking about Carey Price, and the Carey Price was back last night facing 32 shots and just being solid on rebounds and tracking the puck. And to me, the first star, you have to start in net if you're going to have any success when he's good. And he was real good, obviously, in the first period to allow the Canadiens to find their legs, because I thought looking at that first period, I said, oh boy, it's going to be a real tough night, because Tampa was all over them, I think, in a lot of areas. And, they stuck with it. Price, basically had some goalposts working with him to allow him to get the right breaks. And, that's what you need. That's puck luck. And that's what they had in the other series. And hopefully that will continue for them, because who knows where it's going to go.
Patrick Waugh was in the building. I wonder if he was telling Carey Price that you should talk to your posts like he used to do to get the luck. For me, it was the mental toughness of this team. A lot of people thought it was over, that the Tampa Bay Lightning were going to win the Stanley Cup. The first time the Stanley Cup will be in the Bell Center presented, and they didn't let that go. And especially late in the game when Shea Weber had that 4-minute major penalty, and the Tampa Bay Lightning are a team that you don't want to give that much power play time to, especially late in the game. I'm sure they wanted it to be over, to plan the celebrations to go back to Tampa rather than going back to Tampa and have to play a Game 5. And the fact that they didn't let that set in to their mindset, the Montreal Canadiens, they found a way to dig deep and overcome it and get the goal, not let Tampa be able to capitalize on that. And to me, that was huge with them. Their mental game, not letting the nerves of being potentially eliminated get the best of them.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that impressed me in that game. Just the heart of this team and their unwillingness to just roll over and die. What a fight they put up. One of the things that impressed me the most was Shea Weber. The man mountain. he was the mean man mountain in Game 4. In the 5 years that Shea Weber's been here, I've never seen him play a game with that nasty streak that he had. He was angry. He was hitting guys to hurt them. It was just a physical, dominating performance by Shea Weber. And I think that's going to be in the back of the Lightning guys' heads going into the next game. I mean, he was punishing guys, whether it was cross-checking them, which he never gets called for, it seems, or very rarely, or just physically, abusing Lightning players. There was one time he grabbed just grabbed him, basically threw him to the ice like he was a little boy. And we haven't seen that from Shea Weber since he's come here. He hasn't had that mean streak, but boy, did he ever have it in that game. And, when he took that high sticking penalty at the end for the 4 minutes, and I was thinking to myself, boy, the way he's played tonight, it's going to be such a shame if they lose this game because of that penalty he took. And then asking Brendan Gallagher after the game, obviously you want to kill off a 4-minute penalty to anybody, but did it even mean more the fact it was Weber in the box? And it did. I think that the guys must have been saying, we can't let it end like this with a sitting in the penalty box for a high sticking penalty. And Shea Weber was just dominating, I thought. And what a performance. And as Ricky mentioned with the penalty kill, their best penalty killer is always the goalie, and Carey Price was on his game.
And I think you have to throw Ben Sherrod in that mix of physical play too, because he was pounding away at guys, and obviously their game plan was make it really difficult for Kucherov and Point. And when you get a chance to really crack them, you make them pay. And this is an eye opener for those guys, for the Tampa guys. That hey, heads up, maybe there's going to be a little bit of hesitation to play, knowing very well that somebody's coming at them no matter where they are, and going to make life miserable. And that's always been a key point in success against some of the top players. You make it really tough on them. You close on them. You physically abuse them if you can within the rules, and get them off their game so they'll be less effective. Not to say that those guys are not able to respond, but at least they're going about it the right way. For them, understanding they're not going to have any type of free time and space to do what they like to do. So keep pounding away at them and make their game really, really difficult each and every shift.
Yeah, Sherrod had 9 hits in that game, but Joel Edmondson played over 28 minutes. I mean, what a pickup he was by Marc Bergevin. What a solid, strong, physical defenseman he is. Man, he's not fun to play against, I'm sure. And I've mentioned this before on the show. I mean, for our viewers out there who are too young to have watched Rick Green play, Joel Edmondson's Rick Green. I mean, he reminds me so much of you, Rick. Just that big, strong, physical presence back there, strong against the boards, makes life hard on the forwards and the corners and along the boards. Good first pass, getting the puck out, can rush up with the play when he has to. But I mean, what a great pickup he was by Marc Bergevin during the offseason. He's really brought something important to this team. And not in the room, we'll get to see these guys on Zoom, but he seems like such an intelligent guy and calm guy and thoughtful guy. Another leader in the room, another guy with the Stanley Cup ring from St. Louis. So he's impressed me right from the start of the season, and he impressed me again in Game 4.
And if it weren't for Edmondson, we wouldn't have known that Alexander Romanov and Brett Kulak were going to be playing in Game 4. and we did mention Dominic Ducharme's coaching decisions, but he got maligned for them a lot, but those ended up working out pretty well. I mean, those two defensemen who I've just mentioned, I thought they played a particularly good game, and Alexander Romanov can say he scored a goal in the Stanley Cup final. He's still a rookie. He still has a lot to learn, but and I've said this before, I don't see any reason why you don't put him in these games, because he's shown that he's a confident guy and he's able to rise to the occasion, just like some of these other young players have at different points in the playoffs. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, maybe still a little so-so on that coaching decision, but Jake Evans inserted for him in the lineup. He didn't look out of place either. Also, I'll give a shout-out to the second power play unit, which, forgive me, I don't remember all the names, but I think it had Josh Anderson, Brendan Gallagher, Shea Weber, Yoel Armia also there, and Eric Stahl. And everyone looking at that lineup in practice was thinking, who's going to carry the puck? They're probably going to allow a shorthanded goal. They had an opportunity with the power play at one point, and they looked okay. Dominic Ducharme's coaching decisions, I guess those are the things that impressed me the most. The fact that for the most part, they worked in Game 4, just when it looked as if Dominic Ducharme, with the back against the wall, was probably going to crumble with the decisions that he made. They ended up working out. Before I get to our next question, I know Jess at different points has mentioned that Tampa would obviously love the opportunity to win on their own home ice and have the home fans in front of them. I know the Tampa Bay mayor would very much like that. And just as a little tease for everyone watching, we will have a bonus episode on that. So don't worry. To the actual question, which actually pertains to a talking point I just discussed, which is Dominic Ducharme's coaching decisions, which they worked out in Game 4. We saw Alexander Romanov in the lineup, but let's look at it on another angle, I guess. Why did it take so long for Alexander Romanov to be inserted into the lineup? Do you think that decision and maybe some other ones, maybe they're just kind of a little too late in the final for him to have done that?
I think so, that this decision should have been made after Game 2. Shake things up in Game 3 when you return home to the Bell Center. And I still don't understand why it's so difficult for Alexander Romanov to be in the playoffs, and why is it such a risky decision for them? He showed last night, in Game 4, just, how well he fit in. He scored that goal. Brett Kulak as well. So it was a nice upgrade on the blue line, putting these players in. You had nothing to lose there, especially for Alexander Romanov, who is a young player, and you want him to learn from these experiences. Now, taking Jesperi Kotkaniemi out of the lineup, it was something to shake it up. He wasn't necessarily playing at the top of his game, and it worked out well with Jake Evans. But that one's less of a, I would say, controversial kind of move. It's just more the entire playoffs, why Alexander Romanov is always the one that is fighting to get into the playoff spot rather than the one that you're looking at and putting in. I still just don't understand the mindset behind that with the coaching staff.
Yeah, I agree with Jess. I thought Game 3 would have been the better time to make that move. I mean, here you take a rookie like Romanov, who hasn't played since Game 1 against Vegas, and you throw him now into an elimination game for the Stanley Cup. That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. I thought it would have made much more sense to make the moves for Game 3. Why did it take so long? Well, they were winning. They were winning with Gustafsson and Merrill as their third defense pairing, even though they were hardly playing them at all, which was taking a huge toll on their top 4 defense. And against Tampa, the top 4 guys are just wearing down. You can't go with 4 defense against a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning. You have to be able to play your bottom third pairing. And they obviously didn't have trust in Gustafsson or Merrill to put them out there on the ice together. They were slotting them in with other guys. And Kulak and Romanov played well together during the regular season. And Gustafsson and Merrill have no future with this team. Kulak and Romanov do. So it made no sense that they just kept sticking with these other 2 guys. I couldn't understand it. And watching, Brett Kulak played fantastic in Game 4. I thought he played really well. He had a couple of moments with the puck where he struggled a little bit, which might have been nerves. And Kulak's spoken in the past about how when he loses his confidence, sometimes it's hard for him to get that back. But he played a really good game. Strong skater, physical. Both those guys are physical. And it's sort of scratching your head why they wouldn't want these guys in the lineup. And with Romanov, all the other young guys they've played have played really well. And Romanov is their future, probably number 1, number 2 defenseman moving forward. And why you wouldn't want him to have this playoff experience. If Gustafsson and Merrill were obviously much, much, much better than him, okay, but they're not. So I think he waited 1 game too late. It was SC that they finally did make the move. And I was happy for Kulak and Romanov that they stepped up and they played really well, I thought, under a difficult circumstance, thrown into a high-pressure game after being a healthy scratch for so long. So good for both of them.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, we've spoken highly of those guys, all 3 of them, for most of the year and what they bring. And, it's tough to make changes when you have a so-called winning lineup, but I think it was a little bit late in arriving because, look at it. Evans steps in there. He's a starting centerman. And then those Kulak and Romanov stepping in and showing the poise that they showed with their speed and their ability to move the puck was quite impressive. And I think it was a real welcome addition to see those guys back there on the blue line to do what they do best, and that is make that puck move and get the puck up the ice so that they can allow some penetration into the offensive zone. So really nice to see those guys handle the tough pressure situation after not playing for a while. And you have to give them full marks that they showed poise and confidence in their game, and that's a real positive for that group to step in there and do what they did and perform as well as they did.
Yeah, I felt bad for Romanov and Kulak when they were on the ice for that second goal by Tampa to tie it up. It was more of Tyler Toffoli made a bad play there. He had a chance to get the puck in deep, didn't, and they got caught going back the other way. But that was one of the puzzling things of that game is they were on the ice together because Sherratt and Petrie were both in the penalty box for 2-minute roughings, but they ended up being in the penalty box for about 8 minutes, I think, because there was no whistles, and I couldn't understand why the Canadiens didn't just ice the puck to get those two guys back on. It was very bizarre. So I felt bad for Kulak and Romanov when they got caught in that, but they were forced to use them together because of the penalties to Sherratt and Petrie. And I was thinking to myself, I was watching the press box, like, ice the puck. Just ice the puck. Get these two guys back out of the penalty box so you can play with 6 defense again. But again, that goal, it wasn't their fault. Toffoli made a bad decision, and it ended up costing them.
And it's probably the defensive coach's worst nightmare when you look back and you're like hesitating as far as who you should have out there or who you shouldn't have. And it happens sometimes, just the way the game goes, that you don't really have a choice. And, I don't point the finger at any one of those guys other than a combination of things that led to it. And thank goodness it didn't end up coming back to haunt them. But, they went back out there and they showed the poise, and, compliments to them.
Not to single out Tyler Toffoli here, but I'm with you, Stu. I thought that play, which led to the game-tying goal at that point, that's really all Tyler Toffoli's. I mean, not to say it's just fault. Yeah, he kind of messed up on that play. A bit of a downtime for him. I don't think he's had a point since the game 5 against. Jeez, yeah, he hasn't had a point since.
Series also, yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't had a point since game 5 against the Vegas Golden Knights in the 3rd round series. That's a guy that the Canadiens need to step up going forward if they want to get any more wins in this series. We know we've praised the offensive abilities of Nick Suzuki. Cole Caulfield has stepped up. Josh Anderson, we know what he's done. But yeah, they need Tyler Toffoli, who they tried to move around on that top line with Brendan Gallagher and Phil Deneau to try to get himself going from an offensive standpoint. Nothing has really happened, at least in this series. But game 5, he's going to have to do something going forward for this team. We've looked at all the coaching decisions. It's time we talk about Carey Price, a guy who, I don't want to say he's carried. Actually, what I did there, carried there. In some ways, yes, he has carried the Montreal Canadiens to the Stanley Cup final, but we can say at different points, other elements of this team have also helped him out. But through the first 3 games of this series, he looked ordinary, pedestrian. In game 4, 32 saves. It's the best he's looked all series long. How much blame do you put on Carey Price for the losses in the first 3 games in this series?
Well, the saying is you win as a team and you lose as a team, and it's very true. But the reason they lost those 3 games, one of the main reasons, is Carey Price didn't play very well. I mean, he really wasn't himself. He looked uncomfortable in the crease. He looked like he was fighting the puck. In game 4, he looked that way a little bit at the start of the game too, but then he seemed to find his groove again and get it back. But this is the Carey Price we've seen in the regular season for the last 3 seasons or so. With the inconsistency, he goes on hot streaks and then he loses it and comes back down. And unfortunately for him, we saw it again in the playoffs. And unfortunately, when he came back down on that roller coaster ride, it was in that Stanley Cup final. But they're not in the Stanley Cup final without Carey Price. I go back to that overtime game against Toronto when they were outshot 13-2 and they won. They had no business winning that game, and they wouldn't have won it without Carey Price. So you win as a team and you lose as a team. But one of the reasons, or big reason why they fell behind 3-0 is Carey Price just did not play very well. But credit to him, after game 3, he says, I have to be better. I know that. And he was. As Dominic Ducharme said after game 4, he says Carey Price answered the bell, and he really did. He played great. They probably don't win game 4 without Carey Price. But you win and lose as a team. Everybody has a bad game now and again, but when a goalie has a bad game, it's much more glaring than if a forward or a defenseman has a bad game. So good for Carey Price to bounce back the way he did, and for the Canadiens, you hope that he can continue that going forward now. That roller coaster ride, hopefully now he's back on the high and he's going to stay there for the rest of the series.
Yeah, and we all know that's the toughest position on the team. And, like Stu said, Carey Price came forward, and you don't hear that very often when he says, listen, I have to be better. I have to do what I do best, and that's stop the puck at key times. And with the type of character that Price is, and we've seen it before, he was able to, make the adjustments and focus, or whatever he does, to bring his A game in game 4, and hopefully that will continue. But a huge part is him. I don't blame him for the first 3, other than he he knows he has to be the first star each and every night. And I think he's capable of doing. He's shown in the past, and let's hope that he will do that moving forward.
And it's a mutual thing. Carey Price bails out his teammates. When Carey Price not playing well, he needs his teammates to bail him out and step up their game. I'm happy that the Habs coaching staff did not pull a Peter DeBoer and have a goaltending controversy in the middle of a deep playoff run. I know during Game 3, a lot of the broadcast kept focusing on Jake Allen, if he's going to go in. Questions to Dominic Ducharme afterwards was, is Jake Allen going to get a start? And he kind of almost was speechless when that question was asked to him. He said, no, Carey Price is our guy. We have confidence in him. And they continued with him. And Carey Price was able to show that he could bounce back. He's the one that says, this is my window of opportunity. He's not going to let it slip away now. And it was just a matter of time before things start to click for Carey Price.
Yeah, I think going back to what I was talking about Shea Weber being mean Shea Weber in that game, him and Price, I think they realized this is probably the best chance at a Stanley Cup. I mean, get to the Stanley Cup final, no matter how good your team is. There's no guarantee the Canadiens are going to get back there again. These guys are near the end of their career, and with the game on the line, the series on the line, they both stepped up and just played huge. And Carey Price is such a proud guy. Vasilevsky totally outplayed him the first 3 games. There's no doubt he was the better goalie. I think Carey Price wanted to show, hey, look at me. I can still compete with this guy. And as I said, that window of opportunity for Weber and Price, so one thing they don't have in their trophy cabinets is a Stanley Cup. And when the pressure was the most and the highest, and they saw the possibility of this dream of theirs ending, they stepped up and played really well. And I would expect them to do the same moving forward.
I'll say this about Carey Price. I think it's okay to say that, the team needs him to be better, and they need everyone else in front of him to be better. Because as far as I'm concerned, I put more blame and more emphasis on the Canadiens turning the pucks over and having those turned into goals allowed. I think those have killed the Canadiens more than Carey Price's play. While I did say that he's looked a little ordinary, and that's still true, Carey Price has had to fend off some shots coming off of some broken plays. I think of the Ryan McDonough play leading to a Barclay Goodrow goal, which came off of the Tampa Bay Lightning jumping a play and creating a turnover. The Canadiens have had to deal with that all series long. They cannot afford to make mistakes against this Tampa Bay Lightning team. And when you compare the forwards and defense to Carey Price, I think the guys in front of Price have made more mistakes than he has. But he can still be better, and he at least looked better in Game 4. So the Canadiens still alive in the Stanley Cup final. It remains to be seen if they'll win Game 5. Will each of us, Stu, Jess, and I guess, will we be in the building for a Game 6? Will there be a Game 7? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. You can let us know in the comments section below if you think the Montreal Canadiens have any chance of coming back and forcing a Game 7 and winning the Stanley Cup. Holy crap, what a sentence to say, right? Like, it's wild. This hasn't happened since 1942. I think the Leafs did it, funny enough. I didn't think we'd have to mention the Toronto Maple Leafs at any point, but here we are. Let us know in the comment section below what you think, and if there are any other questions you want us to tackle in a future episode, write it down. We'll get to it. Visit hockeyinsideout.com to check out our full episodes and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Do that.